Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reed and I'm the designer of Firefly Misbehavin, which is a deck building card game set in the Firefly verse. The game has each player playing a different faction in Firefly. So you have Serenity, Niska, Eves Down, or the Alliance. And the game is asymmetrical in that each faction has a starting deck of 10 cards that is unique to that faction. So they don't have any cards in common or any kind of overlap there, and they are building from possible market cards from the three different areas of space, the core, the border, and the rim, or supply cards where there are multiple copies of the same effect that will be temporarily in your deck. Each faction has a good mix of cards with different effects in their starting decks. But there's one card that I think is really powerful for that faction in just about any situation or any strategy that you're going to employ in the game. So I wanted to point each one of those out and tell you why I think it is the most powerful card in that deck. So we're going to start with Serenity. And it will probably not be surprising, but the Malcolm Reynolds card, I think, is the best card in that deck. So let's talk about why. First of all, he has two different attributes. He has the deal-making attribute and the fight attribute. So you can use Malcolm and use your activation to play him either from your hand or from your tableau out to the display area to make a deal. Making a deal is like recruitment. You're getting a card from the market or the supply to add to your deck, but you're able to use credits as influence and not just the influence. And then, of course, the fight attribute lets Malcolm be in a fight, whether he is on the offense trying to nab or dispatch, or on the defense trying to protect some card in his tableau. In a fight, he's going to bring 2 power, which is pretty good. I'm sorry, that's the power right there. Power's under the gun. And he does have 2 influence for recruitment or for deals. So that's also a pretty good number. It's the highest number in the starting deck for Serenity. And then, of course, there is the ability. So it requires an activation. It's got the little lightning bolt. So either when you play it, you immediately trigger it, or if it's already in your tableau, you use your activation to trigger it. And it lets you discard a card from your hand to gain credits equal to its power. And that can be any card. And I like to use a Misbehave card, here that has 4 power. So this is a supply card. It's got the little supply logo of the crate there. And when you play supply cards to your display area, once their effect is fully resolved, they return to the supply. But anything that you're going to do to discard a supply card, it doesn't return to the supply. It's just discarded. And so this doesn't specify that it needs to be, an asset or a character, or can't be a supply card. It's any card. Discard a card from your hand. So Misbehave, if it's in the game, because the supply sets that you have in the game can change from game to game. This is a great card for Serenity to get for multiple reasons. One, of course, is it's got the fight attribute, and it's going to bring 4 power to a fight. So that's a big deal. You can discard it for Malcolm's effect to get 4 credits, which is a lot of credits. And the other thing, of course, is that each faction has a unique way that they can earn one of their verse tokens. And for Serenity, they have to have a character in play. So if you've got Malcolm in play and you discard cards from your hand until you have discarded 4 power, that's how they earn a verse token. So with 1 card, they can do that. So it's a great combination. If these are in the game, Serenity should be trying to pick them all up if they can. It's great for getting into fights and for defending yourself if you do get into a fight, and for going for the win, of course. But yeah, getting a lot of credits if you want to get some credits. So all around, Mal is a very great utility card. Deals, fights, influence, get some credits. All in all, very effective. So it is the best card in that deck. Let's look at Niska's deck. So the Niska card in that deck is pretty good, but I think for all the situations that you can get into and the strategies that you can employ playing Niska, I think Crow is the best card for Niska. So once again, he's got 1 attribute, it's fight. He's bringing 3 power into a fight. And that's a lot of power, almost as good as a Misbehave card. And of course, this one doesn't return to a supply. It's always in your deck. No influence, so he's not really going to be helping you out with recruiting, but he's got an interesting ability here, and it has no activation, so you can just do it. It's like a free action, and that is discard Crow from your hand or tableau, and another card from your hand to cancel a deal or to gain 2 credits. So this is the card. All the factions except the Alliance have at least one card in their decks that can help them to cancel someone else's deal. So that's handy to do. Crow is a little bit of a cost with that. You got to discard something else from your hand. But, if you're not getting into a fight, you can discard a supply card like Misbehave, and that would let you cancel the deal. Or you're just like, you know what, I need to pick up some credits. So you might be discarding Crow and some supply card, or any card really, to get some credits so that you can use your activation to make a deal and use those credits to get something even more expensive. So Crow is pretty good. And then the last thing, of course, is that the way that the Niska faction gets their verse token is they need to have a character in play. So you not necessarily want to have Crow, but then they have to discard one card that has exactly 3 power or 3 influence. And there you have it, 3 power. So if you've got Niska or one of the other characters from the starting deck, or a character that you've picked up from the market, have that in your tableau. You can just discard Crow. If you're not, send them out to pick a fight or gain credits just to get that verse token. So they have a couple of cards in the Niska deck that have exactly 3 power or 3 influence, making them the faction that probably can earn those verse tokens the easiest. So putting Crow to work in multiple different ways, very effective. Let's look at the Alliance. So the Alliance has a few cards that in combination are pretty effective. And this is one of those cards as well. They got their Marines, which if they're both in the display area, they pump each other up and they get more powerful. Harkin is a pretty good card because he's got power and influence. But I think that their Tohoku class cruiser is probably the best card in their deck. It's got a really high defense value, so it's hard to take away. It counts as a ship, which means you can play maneuvers if you've got the cruiser in your tableau. It can be used in a fight and is bringing 3 power in a fight, which is good. And then, as I mentioned, cards that pump up other cards. Well, the 2 of the cards in the Alliance starting deck are the core space cards, and that's really the only thing they do is give you influence for recruiting or making deals. But you have to have both of those cards in play, so either in your tableau or in your display area, because one core space card is worth 0 influence. It's worth however many other core space cards you have, and you only have 2. There's only really 2 in the game, so they got to have one in the tableau, which means the other one is always worth 1, or they got to stick both of them in the display area so that each of them is worth 1. But this card counts as core space when played or moved to your display area with another core space card. Now, this card has no influence itself, so it will not provide any influence even with other core space cards, but it makes the other core space cards more valuable. So if this is in your display area with 2 core space cards, each core space is worth 2. So that gives you 4 influence, where normally the 2 core space cards are only going to give you 2 influence. So that is a big deal. It does mean that you've got to have this card in your display area, which means it's going to be discarded and then you'll have to play it again. But if it's just in your hand and you've got some core space, you can put them all out there, and that's 4 influence. So this maneuver gives the Alliance the potential to have the most influence in their starting deck. Everyone else has 6 influence broken up between their 10 starting cards in different ways for each faction. But they can get to 7 influence if they've got all 3 of those cards out there. So it's supposed to represent, bureaucratic red tape. They have a lot of power and resources to bring to bear, but it's not always easy to get the stars to align. And then finally, we're going to talk about Eve's Down. Now, Eve's Down that's Badger and his criminal enterprise on Persephone. And I think that the most powerful card in that deck is Very Fine Hat. So there's a Badger card, and Badger's pretty good. He's got good influence. He can get a lot of credits. He can make deals. But let's look at what the Very Fine Hat does. So by itself, it's 1 influence. That's one of your 6 influence in there. But there's kind of a nifty trick that you can do here. So it has an ability with the activation symbol. So you'll have to spend your activation to play this card, and or if it's already out there, to just trigger it. And what you do is you use that activation, you trigger it, and then you discard this card from your tableau. And then you discard a supply card from your hand to your recycle pile. So you're discarding it, you're not returning it to the supply. But then you get to add its cost to your influence pool. So let's go back to that Misbehave. Misbehave has a cost of 4. So if Eves Down has a Misbehave card in their hand, and they've got either Very Fine Hat in their hand or in their tableau, they use their activation, trigger it, and discard it, then discard that, and then boom, they're adding 4 influence to their influence pool. So it's virtual. They've got 4 influence, but then they could play a card like Badger, which adds a couple more influence and some more. And so this card gives Eves Down the potential to recruit very expensive cards pretty early. They'd have to get something with a cost of 3 or 4 or something like that to really make this worthwhile. And again, if Misbehave is in the game, it's a card everybody should really want to get. There's only going to be 5 of them in the game. And of course, when they're used, when they're played to a display area, they will return to the supply. It's good to have them in the deck because they're a good deterrent. If everybody knows that you've picked up 1 or 2 or more of these cards, they're not going to be terribly keen to pick a fight with you because they know that you can whip these things out and win that fight quite easily. Although sometimes you want to pick a fight with somebody that you know has the Misbehave cards to force them to use them so that then they have to get them again once they're trying to gear up to win the game. But in the meantime, this should be a central strategy for Eves Down, is to get a relatively expensive supply card. And you don't want to just get one. You're going to want to get a few of them. Maybe you get some maneuvers. So even though Eves Down doesn't start with a ship, and they might not even get a ship, but just having the maneuver so that they can discard them from their hand with their Very Fine Hat activation, then they're able to get those really high numbers of influence so that they can pick up some planet cards. Those are usually very expensive, so that if they're expensive, they're going to have a high defense value, which means they're hard for other people to take away from you or to dispatch when you do go for the win. So those are my thoughts on what the best card for each faction is. Again, you've got a variety of effects in those 10 cards, and sometimes you can get some nice synergies with some of those cards, depending on what types of things you're trying to do. But I think, like I said, these are cards that are going to be good just about every game, no matter what's going on. Even if you're using an episode where you're trying to do other things to win the game, or you have other objectives that have to be achieved before you can win the game, these are still going to be your best go-to cards. So protect them. Don't let them get nabbed by other players, and use them wisely. If you have any questions, let me know. That's it for this one, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.